A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for creating time to join us today on Newscheck. It is 8 days into the 4th month, the year 2020. This is a program that seeks to inform you on what has been happening in our country and especially as we look at what is happening in different counties. And what we do here is that we have a conversation in studio as we bring into perspective some of the issues that have been shaping the news and help you understand how they are going to be impacting your life going forward. And also we take you to different events that are currently happening. As they happen live, we bring them right here live for you on KBC Channel 1 for you to be able to keep track on what is happening in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Now, currently globally, we are all dealing with how to curb the spread of the deadly coronavirus that has claimed at least 76,000 lives globally, with 1.3 million cases of COVID-19 having been reported in several countries globally. In our country, Kenya, locally, yesterday, as at evening, 14 more positive cases of coronavirus were reported, which, according to the Health Cabinet Secretary, Mutahi Kagwe, 12 are Kenyan citizens, with only 2 being foreigners. Now, this brings to the total number of positive corona cases to 172, and the cases keep rising by the day. The government has really stepped up its efforts to mitigate the spread of this virus, which has included taking very tough measures. And the most recent being to curb the spread of the virus, the CS announced that they are going to be targeting playgrounds that are used by a majority of Kenyans for recreational facilities. Now, this included the closure of all golf clubs in the country. But it came just a day after President Uhuru Kenyatta issued a directive on cessation of movement. And that is what is forming the basis of our conversation this morning, because this directive actually placed 4 counties. I'm talking about Nairobi and 3 coastal counties of Kwale, Kilifi, and Mombasa under partial lockdown. This has affected transport in so many roads in the country. So many commuters got stranded, especially those who were supposed to be coming to Nairobi or leaving Nairobi on Monday when that directive took effect at 7 p.m. So we will be talking about how this has affected the transport sector and what are some of the options going forward, even as commuters and operators are adjusting to adhere to the guidelines that have been issued by the government. And joining me in studio to have this very important conversation is none other than Dixon Mbugua, who is the chair of the Matatu Welfare Association. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me in the studio.
All right, so a lot has been happening in the past days concerning how we are, stepping up our efforts to mitigate the spread of coronavirus. And the most recent was touching on the Matatu sector, the so-called public transport sector. I don't know, from the directive that was issued by the president the other day, how has it impacted the industry in which you operate in?
Well, the directive given by our president, Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, and also the Minister for Health, CS Mutahi Kagwe, has impacted negatively in the industry, such as that the restriction of the vehicles from other counties coming to Nairobi and people from Nairobi moving into the other counties has negatively really impacted on our PSB transport sector. Mm-hmm. One, the vehicles from those areas, like maybe from Eldoret, Nyeri, Meru, Kisii, and even Kajiado from Namanga, are not allowed to come into the CBD. Mm-hmm. Yes, mm-hmm. Unless on a special purpose for which it will have applied for in the NTSA and other sectors of the government. And that being the case, their road service license is clearly identical, that they cannot divert from their normal routes unless on a special purpose, in which case they will have to apply also to NTSA. So the only option down they have is really to ground the vehicles down. Mm-hmm. For 21 days. For 21 days. And this is going to have quite a number of impacts. Let's talk business, looking at,
in terms of the economic losses, how much loss are we talking about in terms of even percentages going forward before the lapse of the 21 days?
We are talking in terms of colossal sums of money, that I can assure you. Ordinarily, we have an estimated vehicles that apply within Nairobi CBD or Nairobi peripheries, about 18,000. That includes the vehicles long distance coming from other countries into Nairobi.
So
it's about
18,000
18,000
plus of 18,000 vehicles.
Plus those that operate within Nairobi town services. So 30% of those 18,000 come from the other counties. These are the long distance service vehicles. That's about over 5,000 are now, as we're talking, grounded because they can't come to Nairobi. And that is a colossal sum of money in terms of revenue that they generate. As you know, an investor, once you put your money into a vehicle, you expect some returns.
Some returns, yeah, that's true.
After some time, you are projected. That's why the purpose of people going to the banks, to the circles, so that they're able to be funded, so that at least you work a plan, maybe 3-4 years, you will have repaid. Now, for the 21 days, there will be nothing coming in terms of returns. So you can imagine.
Is this going to have a ripple effect on the national economy?
Of course, because when you talk of 5,000 plus vehicles, and assuming each consumes about 40 liters per day, so the government is going to lose on the road maintenance fuel levy, which is 15 shillings per liter. It's also going to lose the VAT, that is, it was reduced to 80% on those vehicles, and also the excise duty, because the fuel also has got to be taxed. It has all manner of taxation. But here we are confining ourselves into excise duties. So those three fundamental taxes that adds up to the GBT and also to the exchequer. The government won't be able to get that.
They have been interrupted.
They have been interrupted, so it won't get on that. Now come to the side of the investor. Assuming those vehicles every day leave a balance, say, of about 4,000, 4 to 5. Yeah, 5,000 by 4,000 or 5,000. That translates into a lot of money, hundreds of some tens of millions. Yeah, that will not be able now to be generated because of this restriction.
All right. So what about those who depend on the matatu sector to earn their daily shilling? How have they also been affected?
They're also affected because
hawkers, there are so many people who depend on
so
that
many
sector.
people. We are talking now about the juakali or SMEs. Yeah, those are the juakalis. Those are the hawkers, and including even the employees that are employed in those vehicles. Those now will lose their daily expected income. Yes, and the employees are the most hard hit. Hawkers and these juakalis can look into other areas where they can now try to sell their merchandise and what have you. But the employees won't be able to be employed elsewhere. And which is this elsewhere? Because already so many thousands have lost their jobs.
Yeah, there are so many sectors and companies are closing down, businesses are also closing down. So options are limited.
Yeah,
Did you see this coming though? You know, observing the trend that is happening in other countries like Uganda, for example, in the public service sector, and you know, in other countries where the cases have been higher than what has been reported locally, what they've done with their public transport sector. Did you see this coming as stakeholders?
We saw that one coming up because the moment a country goes into total lockdown, it has implication. Nearly every economic sector is affected. People cannot come from their houses to go to work. Yeah, companies won't be able to open. Yes, and so forth. We saw it coming.
So what options what did you do to cushion, you know, those who are in business in the sector, and even just in terms of preparedness, in case you had suspected or you saw this coming? What did you do? What measures did you take?
First, the issue of limiting the capacity of the vehicles from 14 to 80 passengers. Yeah, that one we also saw it coming because of the social distancing that people are supposed to keep. You know, it cannot, the matatu and other buses operators cannot be exempted from the social distance keeping. They have also to be involved. After all, they are ferrying so many people to work and back home, and social distance is almost mandatory. As we are talking, it's mandatory.
Yeah,
we saw that one coming, but that has a leeway of really people adjusting, although not all of them adjusted. Some opted to close down because of the low income. But those who
so we have quite a number of operators who decided
to park their vehicles. But slightly below 50% are still operating, and with an adjusted fare rates from one distribution to the other one, because if they operated based on the old fares, I'm telling you, they won't make anything.
But which is another thing, and allow me to ask you this question. It has been a point of concern for many Kenyans. The government, on one hand, has been very categorical to ask businessmen and members in your sector, are one of them, not to increase their prices or adjust anything at this particular time, because everyone is suffering from the economic downturn. But we see the prices and the fares having been adjusted. Do you want to tell me there can't be a compromise or some sort of way in which this can be addressed?
There can't be a compromise in any way, because take, for example, matatu flying between Kiambu and Nairobi. Yeah? I've been charging 50 bob. Mm-hmm. Yes? 8 passengers. That's 400 shillings. And that's one way coming. Mm-hmm. Going back to Kiambu, it's not guaranteed. It may go back with what you call mukato, or going along the route, picking passengers that are stranded on the road. But there are not many, because as we are talking, people have also been advised to stay at home. Yeah. Yeah. So there are very few that come up who do not work from their home states. Now, that 400 shillings is not even enough for the fuel and the employees. Yeah. Because that can only be achieved during the rush hour, from 6 maybe to 10. Then from 10 up to 4 p.m., that's off-peak period. Most of the vehicles are grounded, or in normal circumstances, because there are no passengers. Yeah? And then from 4 or 5, maybe up to, again, 6:30, because there is that curfew which restricts people
to go home
by 7. Yeah. So it becomes very uneconomical. That's why some people have
adjusted. You've well explained.
That's the need for adjusting the fare, at least by 50%, which is on average.
You have well explained how this adjustment could have come about, but what have you done about it, having known that the government is really calling for those in business not to make such adjustments, especially at this particular time? Have you reached out to the necessary officials just to sort of even place your issues on the table for them to also look at them?
Economically, really, sometimes we do not have to go to that extent. Right. Yeah. Imagine a time we generate that communication from, say, from today. Today is 8th, I think. Then from today, and by the time you get the consent, that will be about a week. Yeah? That you will not be operating. And then life must continue. Why we say those bold members of the matatu industry, or investors for that matter, that are still operating, is they don't have another resource, income resources. Yeah, they depend on that vehicle solidly. These people have families. These people have got rent to look into. These people have got other domestic requirements. So by parking their vehicles, it will mean that that's the end of the road for that family.
Financially.
And financially.
Yeah.
And when talk financially, that translates into everything, because currently these days, things demand resources for you to sort out various issues, yes, whether domestically or through the government offices, taxes, and so forth. That now will mean even worse than COVID-19. People just die in their home state. Yeah?
I know we'll talk about awareness later and the progress that has been made in the transport sector, but you say that you saw this coming, that, you know, just looking at what is happening elsewhere, there was a likelihood that it could take this direction. Was there anything that was done to prepare those in the sector for such times, in terms of just, you know, what will cushion them and what options they have now, those who depend on the matatu sector to earn a shilling?
I would not want to appear as if I'm challenging the government in its approach on these issues. But I tend to think if the current measures that we are applying, of course through the government directives, if they were put in, say in January, when the first incident was reported, I think we would not have, in terms of the COVID suspects, those who are already attacked or infected, would not have reached this number. And maybe we would have moved with a lot of vigor, rigorous
So you're saying
campaigns.
the very first time we had the first case,
Yes.
I believe around the month of February, this, what is happening right now, ought to have happened immediately.
Immediately.
So you're not
So that-
against what is happening, but you're saying it's a little too late.
We are not objecting, and we are not even fighting with what is the current directives that keep on coming from the government, either from the president, from the CS Health. We are not fighting that. In fact, those directions are in the right directions, yeah, those directives. But if the precautionary measures that we are putting in should have been applied in February, the moment we did first detected a Kajiado case that came up, I think we would have made extensive measures, and results would have been much pleasant than what we have now.
Like what, for example, if you were given that?
Like
that
people being
mandate?
aware, like people being social distance. The same directives that are with us, social distance, washing your hands, staying at home, and taking care. You don't participate in crowded places. You
But I
don't
think
go
that is
there.
what the government has been doing all through. That has been the message they've been preaching since.
But the aggressiveness and the rigorous just come in the last, should I say, 4 weeks?
When it's getting
Yes.
worse by the day.
And by there, I'm not trying to critique the government, but these are facts.
All right.
That should be, are there.
So what are the options for those who could be suffering right now? I'm talking about those, you know, who are operators in this, you know, sector, those who do not have a way out. What are some of the options coming from a stakeholder's perspective?
What we are saying, and indeed we have put in some kind of communication in black and white. What we are saying, the government should look into reducing the pump prices of the fuel. Yeah. Say by at least 30 to 40%. Now that the international crude prices is gone almost zero. The other day it was $1 per barrel, as we are talking. It kept on descending, you know, from 50 it came to 30, it came to 20, it came to 10. Yesterday, as I was watching the CNN in the night around 11, the oil producing countries are really at a loss among them, so including the US. They were really had a debate, since now the demand for the crude oil is gone totally down. People are not moving. Yeah? So equally, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority are supposed to have brought the pump prices from the current 100 shillings per liter for the diesel, maybe to 50 bob,
By
or
half.
even 60. Yeah,
Wouldn't
by
that be
half.
too drastic?
Yeah, by half, because the international crude oil is gone to zero. It's now, yesterday it's $1. I don't know, today it will be almost be zero, because there's no demand. Yeah, and also equally for the petrol.
So you
yeah,
think
from 103 or 105, maybe to 70.
So you think this will solve, partially solve?
That partially will solve, because the vehicles that are grounded can now come and start operating. I'm also appealing to the KRA because we have the PSV licenses, yeah, that are pegged on the vehicles being inspected, and then you have the advanced income tax. They should also subsequently reduce those rates from 720 shillings per seat, that's the advanced income tax, maybe by half to 400, yeah, for the time being, until this issue of COVID goes away, yeah. And then, of course, even the Nairobi City County government should also be thinking of reducing their parking fee, yeah. Currently, a 14-seater, which is now 8-seater, pays 3,600. That should come down to 1,000 or 1,800 for that matter. For the time being, for the 3 or 4, 5, 6 months that will be with this fighting the COVID, so that at least all the PSV vehicles that are grounded now can come up and start operating, yeah, even with the old standardized or normal fare.
All right.
Yes.
So you've suggested, you know, some of the recommendations that you feel would partially, you know, remove the agony of some of these operators.
Yeah.
There was that concern, Bona Dixon, of whether we are going to see some operators, you know, changing their routes. Is that even studio? I've been talking to the chair of the Matatu Welfare Association. Bona Dixon, you've heard from my colleague Sarafina how the situation is like in Nairobi. She was talking to quite a number of traders who say how they have been impacted by this virus. I also want you to talk about, you know, how the Matatu sector has been impacted by especially the curfew. For them, they say they have to close business earlier. How is the situation like at the Matatu sector?
It has also been affected. It's not different from the SME traders, because the moment a curfew is placed on, yeah, and then of course that rider has to stay at home. So you have very few passengers now moving from the estate into the CBD or into industrial area for work, yeah, and also the industry also is affected, because they have to make sure that they release their workers by 3. So from 3, possibly up to 5, 6, there's a rush, big rush.
Most vehicles stop operating around what time? Most PSVs?
PSV, the ones that leave the CBD, leave the CBD, whether it's in Nairobi, whether it's other major towns, the last vehicle is 5
p.m.
And that is in the areas that is crowded. In the areas that are urban centers that are not crowded, possibly it's around 6, gets 1 hour to their estates.
And you should see the crisis, especially in Nairobi around that time,
because
when everyone is trying to beat the deadline.
Including even the motorable,
yeah,
you know, workers, yeah, the middle class.
Yeah, the ones who own their cars.
Those who know their cars. We call them my car people. They leave their places at 3 to 4. So you can imagine that jam that you normally witness between 6 and 8 is now has now come forward.
Been transferred.
Yeah, come forward. So between 4 and 6.
And we are all trying to beat the deadline, and then you're stuck in traffic. Now you can imagine the tension and the pressure.
I live in Ongata-Rongai and a vehicle leaving here at 4:30, I can tell you.
You are worried.
A Matatu will not come back. We leave at 4:30, or even at 5. By the time we're getting home, it's 7:15 or 7:30.
All right. Earlier, before we went to the link, I had asked you whether we are going to see a likely scenario of, you know, some of these PSVs changing their routes. For example, the ones that were locked out from coming into Nairobi, maybe they could decide to start operating from other counties or other towns. Is that even a possibility? Can that happen?
Yeah, it's a possibility that you know, our members will really try to venture into that and see whether the NTSA can really give them some kind of special RSLs for the 21 days, assuming that this will last up to 21 days, yeah, this partial lockdown, and possibly allow them maybe to operate within. But a question now comes, those areas have got also their own matatus.
Looking at it in terms of competition.
So that will be a cutthroat kind of competition that may ensue as a result of getting this special permits. We call them special RSLs, so that they can operate in there. That can work, although it's going to clog up again in those areas. But the ultimate thing here is really for the town services and even within other areas, let's say the whole country totally, is to reduce and give a reprieve for those taxes, as I mentioned earlier on, so that at least we are able now to render services to common mwananchi without that hectic increase in terms of the fares. Although ordinarily the fares have just gone up slightly by 50% in most areas. At least 80% of the areas it's gone up by 50%. And for the long distance coming to Nairobi, that's a very dangerous kind of a situation, because they have grounded their vehicles. And they are used then to the fares between Nairobi to Eldoret, between Nairobi to Matu, between Nairobi to Embu.
Okay.
Then allowing them local operations, sometimes it may not work for them. But what are the options apart from complying?
Yeah, that is exactly the question that everyone is asking at this particular time. But with the obvious losses, especially when you're talking about the economic losses, are you working on something to cushion operators, especially those who could be having loans that they are servicing, investors who could be having some sort of loans that they are servicing? Have you reached out to them? Because we've had, talks of certain banks coming up with policies to ensure that their customers have, sort of a soft landing in this particular season. For those who are investors in the matatu sector and they could be servicing loans in one bank or the other, is there something being done to that effect?
Yeah, it must be understood that when these things started, we saw it and we appealed to the government, particularly the Ministry of Transport, and to liaise and consult with the Treasury and most of the central bank. And we are glad they came up, and the central bank came up and then give a reprieve. In some cases, extending a moratorium for those who have loans. For the banks to really look into rescheduling their loans, the repayment terms, repayments per month. And in some cases, extend that maybe for a year or a period that both parties will agree to, so that at least it becomes easier for the loanees to service their debts. That is already taken care of.
All right.
But for the other very important ingredients, the way I have just mentioned and outlined, there is an urgent need to look into those. And that's why I keep on reining in or appealing to energy and regulatory petroleum,
all right, Dixon,
regulatory authority to look into that.
All right, we'll be picking up this conversation in a bit. Right now, allow me bring in somebody else into the conversation who also understands too well what is happening in the matatu sector and how this has affected the sector going forward. I'm talking about the chair of the Matatu Owners Association, Simon Kimutai, who is joining us now via Skype. And just to understand how these new directives by the government have really hit hard on the matatu sector. Generally speaking, sir, what are some of the issues that are happening right now on the ground?
Was that meant for me?
Yes, if you can hear me, sir, we just want to understand from your perspective as a stakeholder in the sector, how are the new directives by the government, especially the ones that touch on the cessation of movement, affected the public transport in the country?
Well, I think the directives was very timely. What we know is that COVID-19 is not a joke. It means it's business of killing human beings. And it is said it can come to you is you who can go to it. And once you get into it, it means you, especially now that we're not properly equipped in terms of trying to deal with it. So the directive has got to be there too. However painful it is, it has to be there. It's not about businesses now. It's about human life. It's about our lives. So I think what is important here is everybody must play their role in ensuring that there is no spread of the virus. And that is, if it's confining ourselves wherever we are, let's do it. 3 weeks is nothing much, and I'm sure our members in the public transport sector should understand this. There is no game to be played here. There is no ferrying passengers to the border so that they can walk. No, this is driving people to death. And for those who are actually doing the same, they are committing suicide. The virus should be confined in Nairobi, be contained there, and it be treated. And any other areas that have been mentioned, it is important that that is the only way we can deal with it, and everybody must understand. We need to confine it for purposes of logistics. We need to, and logistics and the expertise. The only people who have dealt with it is Nairobi and other counties that have been mentioned. It should not be introduced to other counties. So we should not be the agents. And I would tell our members, we should not be the agents of spreading this dangerous virus.
And that is a very important call there, Bwana Kimutai. But then the implementation of some of these guidelines also have come with, quite a big impact on those, especially who depend on the matatu sector to earn a living. What are they saying, and how are they planning to adjust, especially bearing the fact that some of them really cannot survive without going to town and doing something?
I didn't get you very clearly.
My question is, if you can hear me, sir, my question is, the implementation of these directives have come with a great impact on those who depend on the matatu sector to earn a living. What is being done to also ensure that, we cushion them from the impacts that come with this implementation?
Well, I only heard of implementation. And let me just give my way of understanding what you've asked me, is that it is important for all of us to be agents of enforcement. I've liked the way some counties, the villages are enforcing. When they see somebody who has not been at home for a long time, they are either quarantined in their homes, they're not allowed to mingle. And that is the way citizens have got to behave. For those who are misbehaving, let the behaving citizen enforce by ensuring that the law enforcers understand that there's a person who's come, who's sneaked in, and let them be quarantined. It's dangerous for a person now to move from one place to the other. We don't know whether the person is infected. It is important that everybody plays a role. Everybody takes up the responsibility of ensuring that you don't spread the virus or the virus is not spread. So it is the responsibility of all of us. Nobody should say, well, it is this person or the other one. No, it is all of us to ensure that what has been given as a direction, we take up the direction. We've seen countries which have been maimed by the pandemic. We've seen America now, they are unable to control. They are losing 1,800 to 1,900 human beings in 24 hours. If it comes here, we are not well equipped. So the best thing is we have to follow what has been the advice that has been brought about by the ministry. It's very important, and everybody should know. Let us not dance with death.
Mr. Kimutai, how much loss are we talking about in your perspective, and how are the owners adjusting to this?
In public transport, loss has been enormous. We know very well that we've lost up to 80% of business. But I don't think that should be the case now. One thing that actually, that probably I would like to bring up is that public transport is a very important economic facilitator. To all economic activities in Kenya are facilitated by public transport matatu. Let's look at it. 98% of Kenyans use public transport for movement. And we know movement translates itself to economic activities. So the government should have, number one, provided a cushion by either zero rating on fuel used by public transport, remove the fuel levy, for us to be able to operate economically. If we are not operating economically, then our costs of operations are high. Then what happens? The business will come to a halt. Now, there are many ways in which the government would have come in to help the industry, because it's an essential service. Without it, we know there can't be much economic activities in place. So the government should either provide subsidies to public transport operators, or completely zero rate on no taxes, no levies on fuel, so that this can help them be able to sustain. As for now, we cannot be able. I saw that monies have been allocated to other areas. We saw the other day 100 million allocated to artists. And we see public transport as an essential service, a very important facilitator of movement that needs to be supported. We don't need to have this industry collapsing because of coronavirus. It has to be there, and the only way to be brought out is by government stepping in. We know very well that it's government responsibility. Movements of people in the country, it's government responsibilities. Matatu has just stepped in to take advantage of it as a business. But right now, since it is on its knees, the government needs to be able to step in.
Well said, Mr. Kimutai. Do you think that the directive for the cessation of movement was a bit abrupt, especially considering the fact that some people were traveling on that same day and had not finished their journey? Was it too abrupt?
I didn't get your question.
My question is the timing of the cessation of movement directive. Was it too abrupt, especially on Monday?
It's unfortunate that it was abrupt. There were people traveling when there were pronouncements of the lockdown, and I'm happy that I heard the CS Matiang'i say that they will handle a case individually, because if a person was traveling from Mombasa at around before the pronouncements and was going to Busia, for instance, the person must have been caught up between Nairobi and Mombasa. So what happens? It's very difficult now, because going back or getting quarantined in an area where you know nobody and there is no way you can be aided to survive is a challenge. And I'm happy that at least there's been a window of handling a case by case as it is. So that one by itself we should have been given time. We should have been told from tomorrow this time, so that people completely organize themselves and don't move. But this one was so abrupt that 7 o'clock and people are already traveling and they were caught up in between. But I'm happy that this is a lesson that we have learned. Next time we need to have a grace period that people need to have that warning and be able to organize themselves in their movements.
Have you done anything as stakeholders to address the challenges of those who are stranded, the special cases of commuters who were stranded? Have you done anything to address the unique cases?
Well, there's nothing we can do much, because we are not the authority. We cannot be able to say they keep continuing moving, but we will just plead with the government that those who started their journeys before the pronouncements be allowed to get to their destinations. Because right now, it will be like a stigma for people who are traveling. We don't know how they will receive it in the other end. It would be like they are transferring the virus. So it's important also that this has got to be, administered in a way that can be seen to be acceptable to any person who's traveling. It is very important. But right now, you know very well that there are villagers who have taken the law into their hands by even trying to lynch those who have traveled. But it's important for them to be told that a person who's traveled not necessarily would be having the virus, but if it is quarantining them, it is okay for them to be seen not to be spreading the virus.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Kimutai, what do you think, why do you think the Matatu sector is important in this fight against coronavirus? Why is it such a crucial sector?
I didn't get you. What do I think?
Why do you think the matatu sector is crucial in curbing the spread of coronavirus?
You know, it is a convergence. It's an area where most people meet. A matatu, if it's a 14-seater, it can carry up to over 100 people in a day. If it's a 33-seater, it can carry up to 400 people. And this is an area where people converge, the windows are closed, somebody would sneeze. So it can be very dangerous for, you know, if people don't take precaution, it can be an area of real spread of the virus because, as I told you earlier on, majority of Kenyans use this as means of traveling. There is no other mode of traveling that is accommodating as a big number as matatus. Matatus in Nairobi alone, you can see we've been having 6 million Kenyans in the day. In the night, we have 4 million. So 2 million have been transported by matatus, and others, about 2 million others, has been transported to the various places of residence within Nairobi, and some outside Nairobi. So if one person has, and is a 33-seater, you'll know that if 10 people get it, and then the 10 people will give another 10, its multiplying effect is going to be enormous. So it is an area that requires to have proper attention because it can be a breeding ground for coronavirus. So it's important that attention is given. Let this issue of giving masks or ensuring that everybody is masked when entering into a matatu and get things sanitized. Some private sector organizations have actually gone ahead to supply us with the sanitizers, which is beautiful. It's great. It's their concern that they do have that this pandemic has got to be controlled. So we would even want to ask other corporate organizations, because matatus are owned by individuals. They only have an umbrella of SACCOs. SACCOs do not own the matatus. The matatus are owned by individual Kenyans, and probably they might not be able to provide all that is required in ensuring that we are not spreading this virus. So it's important for the government to step in. It is important for private sector to step in because this is what is used every day. Even if we have the 1 meter social distancing, but you can see it can still spread. We've had scientific proof that it can, if somebody coughs, it can stay in air for quite some time. So we must come up to help public transport operators to ensure that their vehicles are fumigated, they are provided with sanitizers, and also ensuring that also Kenyans who cannot afford masks, or if there are no masks, let them be availed, people can buy them.
Before I let you go, sir, how would you rate the progress of adherence to the guidelines by the government from the matatu sector? How would you rate the progress of the implementation of these directives?
Oh, yeah. So far, because it's a matter of life and death, majority of public transport operators have actually adhered to, they have complied. But, you know, since it is teamwork, it's an issue of everybody taking up their responsibility of ensuring that they don't either spread or get the virus. All of us must play part. If it is most matatu boarding points or terminals have been equipped with water and soaps. Some of the matatus, majority of them have sanitizers for any person who would board a matatu midway. So it is very important that at times, because we handle very many people and large amounts of sanitizers are required. You see, if I'm supposed to sanitize 400 people, I will have to turn my revenues to buying sanitizers, and yet it has dwindled. Already 40% has been taken off from passengers from the vehicles. That means 40% of the revenues have gone down. And at the same time, people have been, people have been advised to stay at home, and some have been quarantined. There is a curfew. Now Nairobi has been locked. So the revenues are very little that they cannot afford to probably ensure that everybody gets the sanitizers. So it's important that passengers who are using the service have got to ensure that they are also getting involved in ensuring that they sanitize themselves.
Thank you so much, Bona Simon Kimutai. He's the chair of the Matatu Owners Association, joining us via Skype just to talk about the impact of coronavirus on the transport sector, the public transport sector. And now there you have it. And this has affected so many things in the country. Remember, the directive took effect on Monday, 7 p.m. right here in Nairobi metropolitan area. But it should be taking effect today, beginning 7 p.m. in 3 coastal counties. I'm talking about Mombasa, Kilifi, and Kwale County. I don't know what you read from the mood among Kenyans, even as the ones that Beatrice has interacted with Bona Dixon. Do you feel like we will really win this war if we go at this pace?
Yeah, we will win this war. We will win this war. What is needed now, as you are talking, is really dissemination of information that should scale down to mashinani.
For those who are not adhering to the guidelines, like you've seen in that link, do you think it's for lack of information? I think, or it could just be...
There are 2 perceptions on that. One is lack of information. It has not really gotten it to them. The other aspect of it is easily desperation because of lack of income. People wanting to make something for their life, putting food on the table. Yeah, at the end of it all. Those are the 2 main factors that sometimes make people not really take these issues very, very seriously. But I would want to really comment on the first one. The information about COVID-19 needs to scale down to the mashinani. I'll take you back to the year 2000 onwards, when the HIV/AIDS came into, and by the way, I'm a trained HIV/AIDS advocate and stigma and counseling. I went for 6 months training during that time, and we did a bit of it in the matatu industry, 15 hotspots, and very successful one because we had more than 20 people owning up after lecturing, after being given information, symptoms, and what have you. Equally, this COVID-19, it requires a rigorous campaign. Yes, and campaign, we don't mean calling for people in specific areas as we have been doing in other mode of campaigns. This campaign should be through the media, yeah, and on the ground. Of course, right now as we are talking, as MW are looking for donors, really to fund us. We should be able to go and carry out one because we know how it is done. We have done various, more than 5 campaigns of different magnitude, of different issues.
So what you're proposing is a campaign that targets the local Mwananchi to reach the grassroots levels for them to have information about coronavirus?
Especially the slums. Yeah, they need this sort of campaign.
All right.
Look at it. How many of them do have access to radio, although there's many radios, transmissions and so forth? How many read the paper? How many watch the screens? Yeah, quite a few. So they need to hear this from another quarter. So
a change of strategy in terms of awareness is needed. That's what you're recommending. Let me take you back a bit. There was that gentleman, Mureithi, I believe that is his name. One thing that stood out for me was the effort he took to personally conduct his own form of awareness about coronavirus. He has a bicycle and so many placards that send a message about coronavirus. One that stood out for me was the fact that he was telling people, stop being a joker. Let's declare war on coronavirus. Wash your hands here. Corona kills. But stop being a joker. Just telling people to take this seriously. But he talked about something interesting about having a lockdown in the country as one of the ways he recommends. Do you think that's something that could help? Are we ready for such a measure?
Let me say this. Muriuki is a very good...
Mureithi.
Is it Muriuki?
Mureithi.
Mureithi is a good patriotic Kenyan who is really innovative. I think it took him some time for him to think of going around campaigning even putting that small water tank at the back of his bicycle and those placards. That's a very good patriotic Kenyans. And I wish many people, many Kenyans would emulate that so that at least this gospel is spread as fast as possible. We also did training, TOT. We trained about 100 Matatu Sacco terminus stage clerks and Sacco managers on the do's and don'ts of this COVID-19. And ostensibly, on the understanding that they will also go and train the people on the ground in their own areas, on their own routes, and so forth. That's very critical and very, very important. Now, that information, as I said, they need to cascade down so that people really understand. It's not a joke. The way
it's a serious issue. So should we take serious measures?
Kenyans should take this seriously.
Like what
no matter how much
proposed?
No matter how much you are really oppressed, no matter how hardship it is, because the economy has not also been doing well, we understand that, and people are trying to make a living, and hence coming out of the house. And you mentioned one thing also, that akikaa nyumbani atakula nini, watoto watakula nini. Yeah, that also is a bit contradicting himself, because when you call for a total lockdown, those are the consequences, that people don't have money. They are not able to support the family. They are not able really to put food on the table.
So we are not.
That's
ready
one
for
of the
such
impeding factors that
right.
I think the government is looking into that.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, I asked, Bwana Simon Kimtai earlier about the progress that has been made in terms of, complying to these new directives that were issued to curb the spread of COVID-19, especially the ones that touch on the Matatu sector. How would you rate yourself from where you sit the progress that has been made?
Well, before I answer that question, I would want Kenyans to really understand that public transport all over the world, globally, is a responsibility of the sitting governments, really, to make citizens move from one place to the other. But because 90% of governments all over the world are very poor business people, that's why they relieve this and issue tenders, for private sector really to bid for those tenders and provide the movement, that provision of movement from one to place, and hence that's what we have the matatus in this country. Though it started from 1960s, coming without rules, specific rules and regulation. Until 1985, that it was really officially recognized as a mode of public transport. Now, coming now to your situation, for the last 4 weeks, again, we have now come up rigorously in this campaign, and all of us should be able to join hands. As I said earlier on, it's not one sector, it's not one individual. The government requires support in propelling this campaign so that at least it's successful. So
are there some that are defying? Are there cases? Because we had, there was a warning that public transport operators were disregarding some of these directives. They risk being deregistered. Are there cases you can point out probably that, such measures have been taken?
Not that one I know, but the minister came out, C.S. Macharia came out very, very, very clearly and candidly that there's need to adhere and to comply with the regulations, with these COVID directives. There's no shortcut about it, because it could end up being affected. Even you driver who is defying could end up also, your life is in danger, equal as that of the commuter that you are carrying out. So all of us should be really adhere to that and spell the gospel. When the passengers are, because sometimes I use matatu most of the time, you see some passengers really don't want to be sanitized. They just want to get into the vehicle. These are some of the things we want to discourage. Let every commuter that's traveling by matatus, or even your personal cars, get the habit of sanitizing your hands frequently, or even washing when you get home. Not once, not twice, several times, so that at least you are able to repair this COVID-19. Yes.
Because as at yesterday, there were still some vehicles that were impounded as they were floating some of the directives that were given by the government on cessation of movement. What could be happening? What could be the loopholes, though? Because some were trying to take the so-called undesignated routes to get to their destinations, even after the government really gave a directive that in case you're in Nairobi, you should not leave or come to Nairobi for the next 21 days. Are we still having gaps probably that we need to see?
My advice, particularly to the SACCO chairman and the committees respective, because no single matatu operates if it's not affiliated to a SACCO or a company. My appeal to the chairman, those who call shots in the companies and in the SACCOs, to prevail upon their drivers and the conductors to really comply with the government directives. Yes, there is no need, of seeking to penetrate to get into the CBD through Panya routes. You could be carrying some of the COVID-19 carriers without knowing. So you are aiding into spreading the COVID-19. So that's why we have to come out very, very clearly and candidly and appeal to them. And for your information, some SACCOs are not affiliates of the associations. We have 6 associations in this country that have formed part of the Federation of Public Transport Sector. Now we have a single voice for the matatu industry. And currently we are supporting the government in trying to make strategic plans for the BRT to be introduced in this country. As task force, as FTS and Namata. That's what we have been working on, and it's soon coming to fruition. Now, back to the COVID. Wacha zote tuchangie katika kuweka mikakati kutii na hizi sheria ndio tuweze kukinga sisi wenyewe na wale ambao tunabeba kwa hili janga la coronavirus. It's very critical and very, very important.
It's supposed to be a teamwork. Like you said.
Private sector, the economic enablers, because we have many of them, including the public transport sector, which we carry that business on a day-to-day basis. And it participates very greatly in the GDP. For information, we contribute up to 25% of the GDP in this country. Hence the economy. The over 120,000 matatus in this country, that's both taxis, the matatus, the buses, and any PSV motor vehicle contributes greatly to the economy of this country. But it is with that context that also we should be seen practically that we are teaming with the government in terms of repelling the COVID-19.
That relationship, though, there was a proposal to have a training, I think around March, mid-March. The last time we were having this conversation, there was that challenge of lack of information among some of these operators. How has that been addressed? Are there trainings that have happened, especially the government collaborating with the public service industry? Has there been something to that effect?
Let me say in Nairobi, we really have played a big role in supporting the government. I told you earlier on we had trained about 100 young men and women. And those are the ones that have spread, they have educated the others in Nairobi because we didn't go further than that because of the constraint of the resources. They have spread the information to their colleagues within Nairobi that the critical issues, washing hands, using sanitizers, social distance, and avoiding crowded places. If you go walk around, you will see in the evening when passengers are queuing for the vehicles, there's some kind of observant about social distance. Though not all of them, but they are getting it very fast, that when the vehicle comes, the matatu comes, even before it comes, those passengers have got to give space, so that at least Yes.
Last time there was that challenge of the cost and availability of some of these products like sanitizers and even some protective gears. Right now, it is actually a requirement that every person should wear a mask if you're in a public space, and matatus and all forms of PSVs are part of the public space. How is the situation changed right now? And, you know, in terms of accessing these protective gears and the cost and their availability, where you buy them, how is the situation?
Well, I would want to put a challenge to the government. They said through, of course, the industry. We saw the CS, Honorable Betty Maina, you know, explaining that the industry is gone fully into production about the face mask, and we anticipate maybe the next by end of this week or next week, at least they will have supplied all those hundreds of millions of the masks, the face masks, so that at least the matatu industry sector can get a number of them. Because
will they be able to provide those to commuters?
Yeah, through the circles, through association, they should be able to provide. It's a matter of...
At their cost or at whose expense?
Yeah, the government has come out very clear they are going to produce that at zero cost, yes? So we expect them to really give us those supplies so that at least every time a passenger gets into the matatu and doesn't have that mask, at least provided, yeah, so that at least we can supply this mask to as many people as possible within the industry, which is very good. Why I'm saying that? Because this will be already based on the standards, yeah, of masks. The ones that are being tailored within the towns, whether Nairobi or Eldoret or Kisumu, at times we don't think they have standard, yeah? Just like the way the CS Minister of Health explained the other day. Possibly they will only prevent the dust from getting into you, but not the COVID. So we need some kind of standardization to be given to the tailors when they are, you know, stitching these ones, yes.
But currently there is still a challenge in access?
Yeah, there's still a challenge in access.
Okay. You know, these directives have also come with a lot of, you know, impact on the commuters, especially on Monday and yesterday and even today. I believe in many roads, there are some people who are still stranded. Are there certain measures you have taken or an initiative you have taken to reach out to the officials who are concerned to help those who have been stranded on these roads, those who probably had booked tickets, or something that has been done from a stakeholder's perspective?
From a stakeholder's perspective, we are now relying on CS Honorable Matiang'i. Yes. Yesterday said every case will be looked into on merit. So we are anticipating, and don't forget also NTSA is under surveillance of Interior Ministry. Yeah, we are also expecting that after evaluating the situation the way it is, the NTSA, of course, through the Interior, because those are the people in charge, will come up with some directives so that at least these people who are stranded maybe could be moved in. But again, going by the directive that was clearly spelled out by PS Kibichu, he said that if you are in Murang'a, just stay in Murang'a. If you are in Nairobi, stay in Nairobi. Possibly that's what should prevail, and people should really be observed that, unless on exceptional cases whereby now people should be able to seek authority for that traversing counties and moving into Nairobi to other counties, or counties from other countries into Nairobi. Yes.
All right, and you're really helping us understand how this is going to be operating going forward. But I also want to understand what we have seen right now is that companies, you know, different sectors have come out clearly and said that this is what we want to do. This is our portion in helping efforts to curb coronavirus. There has been even others who have given donations that we are giving our donation to the kitty that is going to be helping in curbing this spread. I don't know, from the you know, sector, public service sector, is there anything to that effect?
Sometimes you normally say we kind of providing services to wananchi, almost to a Red Cross kind of position.
What do you mean Red Cross?
The Red Cross is normally known for making provision of donated items and all sorts of equipment and so forth.
Yes.
The matatu industry, people have a very wrong perception that since Mbugu has bought a matatu, or you have bought a matatu,
is it not business?
You are now gone into very lucrative kind of industry, and sooner or later you will be a millionaire. That's not the position in the matatu industry. We are only just, those who have invested are only just bold for lack of doing other things. No any other business can sustain their thinking other than investing in the matatu industry. And the sequence of matatu industry, today I move out, you come in, so that there's that continuity. Otherwise, they don't make as much as people have been thinking they make.
But still,
because of so many taxes. Efforts? There's a lot of taxes. The fares are not up to the standard that should be able to be applicable. That's per mile unit traveled vis-a-vis the fare. We haven't come to that situation to calculate that. If we were to move into that mathematical kind of setup, you will not be able to use the matatus, because what we are charging is far less, not even 50% what should be charged.
It's a Red Cross kind of service, that's what you say.
mean.
But still, what would you say then that is your role in this journey to curb coronavirus?
Our role is really first to inform people. Of course, those who are traveling and those who are at the various terminals and the bus stops, the danger about COVID-19. Yeah? People should be explained how serious this issue is. It's not like HIV/AIDS. HIV/AIDS, of course, we know transmission, how it gets into people. But this one here is more dangerous, is more, I would want to say, the spread is very faster than any other virus. So people should be able to adhere to the laid down rules and regulations. Number two, we also, once they are in the vehicle, although the capacity has been spelled out, 8 for the 14-seater, 15 for the 25, and 16 for the 33.
It shouldn't go beyond 60%.
Shouldn't go beyond that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even the seating arrangements, it has to be 1 meter. And one would want to comment, there's a comedian Masai who goes around town enforcing the 1 meter. He's doing a good job.
Yeah. In a really tough way, if you may ask.
Yeah, in a tough way, because Kenyans are sometimes, not all, maybe 30% of Kenyans really hard to catch up and comply with the directives, but he's doing a good job. Now, when they sit in the vehicle, they must observe the 1 meter kind of situation, not to sit behind each other. That it has to be diagonal, so that at least we observe that 1 meter. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, washing the hands, and of course, avoiding crowded areas.
All right.
Yes.
Well said. I have been speaking to Dickson Mbugua, who is the chair of Matatu Welfare Association, just shedding some light on how the new directives that have been issued by the government have affected the transport sector, the public transport sector in the country. And we've talked about a lot, including the big losses that as currently operators have to deal with. But what stands out from this conversation, and even the one I had with the chair of Matatu Owners Association, Simon Kimutai, is that there is no option. We all have to play a part in helping the government combat the spread of this deadly pandemic that has so far claimed 76,000 lives, more than 76,000 lives. Actually, so far the cases that have been reported stand at 1,358,600, and they keep rising by the day. So any minute you could be getting more figures as we speak. In our country, so far, 172 cases of coronavirus have been reported. We are having 14 cases that were reported yesterday, but we have some good news. Yesterday, the health CS said that there are quite a number of people that keep recovering from this coronavirus in our country. So far, the number of recoveries stand at 7 in our country. This is after 3 more people were declared COVID-19 negative as at yesterday. Half of those new confirmed cases come from Nairobi. Remember on Monday when President Uhuru Kenyatta made that directive, he said, among other things, that Nairobi accounts for 82% of the total number of cases that have been reported in the country. So Nairobi is being focused on as one of the hotspots of COVID-19. And this is among other 3 counties from the coastal region, that is Mombasa, Kwale, and Kilifi, which in total account for 14% of COVID-19 cases. So these 4 counties are really under the radar of the government. But still, remember that other counties are not safe. Garissa County yesterday reported their first case of coronavirus. So it is something that actually in the whole nation, we just need to be careful, because you never know what will happen next and where the next case could be coming from, who is next to you, and what is their status in as far as coronavirus is concerned. But then there are measures that have been put in place that include testing of people. And so far, figures coming from the government is that nearly 5,000 people have been tested for COVID-19 in the country. And we have other measures like what we have been discussing that touch on the public transport in the country, and also curbing areas where people meet and public spaces, which we have seen. As at yesterday, there was that directive by the health CS that going forward with immediate effect, all golf clubs in the country stand closed. So this is actually geared towards just mitigating the spread of coronavirus in the country. And we believe that, yes, it could have come with quite a heavy challenge for a majority of Kenyans who could actually be, probably had planned to travel. Others, it comes with a challenge in terms of their daily livelihoods. Some who cannot go to work, others have been forced to stay at home. They do not know their fate. But generally, it's all about making sure that you stay safe. But you know what? All this could not bear any fruit if you do not observe the basic precautionary measures that have been given. The guidelines just to wash your hands at every available opportunity, to sanitize if you can, to avoid public spaces, places where people are crowded, actually just to observe a social distance. These are the basics that we have been receiving from the Ministry of Health and even the World Health Organizations are some of the things that you can do yourself to curb the spread of this virus. But remember, if you have information, why don't you pass it to others who do not have? Use any means. You can use your phone, whatever direction you decide, just to make sure that we are all aware and we are all informed. Yes. Thank you so much for creating time for us today. Lillian Mathu, Nicholas Kiptanui, Mary Atieno, Ruth Peter, and Philip Chebunet. You've all told me that you're watching, and we thank you for creating time, and all of you who've created time to catch this broadcast. Thank you to my guest, Bona Dixon, for also creating time for us this morning. Until there, we now want to pave way for the Swahili version of the program, Tamrini. Do stay for that. Nancy Okware will be taking you through that. My name is Safin Achieng Oma, and our sign language interpreter is Byron Abuli. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.